Okay, well, welcome to the first of many series. This is dedicated to the first steps of World War II cloud dynamics. And cloud dynamics is basically an applied way of studying history using mathematics. Here's the official definition of cloud dynamics. We do a Google search. It says cloud dynamics is the interdisciplinary science that uses mathematical modeling and quantitative analysis on historical data to study and predict long-term social processes. And so this was coined by Peter Turkin, this concept. And Peter Turkin is a brilliant scientist, and he's a great data analyzer. I think I recently read his article on the Ukraine, and he does apply an analysis on the study of Ukraine. So if I look up cloud dynamics, Ukraine war, he actually wrote, I think it's an 8-part series of articles, um, blogs, journal entries that are basically dedicated to modeling the war in the Ukraine. And so he does a pretty impressive job. He has ultimately a model that works to describe what he believes is the outcome of the war. And maybe I can make a later video on that as far as my understanding of his analysis. But for now, we're going to simply dedicate our energy towards World War II. World War II is a very rich part of human history, especially when it comes to data. The data, from what I have been able to gather, is hard to find. It's harder to find data than I would imagine. If I quickly look up, I type in World War II data, there's not a whole lot that pops up, not as much as you would think. They've got this World War II database, which is basically a website that someone made that dedicates themselves to explaining everything that happened in World War II. But I don't think they have complete data sets. There was one really great website. If I go on YouTube and if I look up, uh, World War II Eastern Front animation, someone made a fantastic video that basically animates World War II. It's created by East Front Animation.
Are you having trouble trying to keep up?
Um, we have to wait until the ads end. But here it is. I'm not going to play the whole video for likely copyright reasons, but it's an animation that shows more or less the location of different divisions and corps. These are German corps, and the Soviets are usually, I believe, represented by armies, as well as also Soviet corps as well. And I think later on we start seeing Soviet divisions as the Soviet army gets worn down on the Eastern Front. These smaller units, I believe, are Soviet divisions. But it's a great animation, um, and it got a lot of great views. But he cites some sources as far as where he got the data, and he cites 3 different websites. Um, the first one is this one. I believe some of the websites aren't working. This one, for example, doesn't work. This link doesn't work anymore. If we open up the second source, this one does work, and it's a complete Russian. So we actually do have one functioning website, but it has to I have to translate it into English because I don't speak Russian. But presumably you have some information here as far as the location of Soviet formations and so forth. But from what I've been able to gather, it's not the cleanest of data. It's not the cleanest website, and it's data that is um, generalized, is the best way I could put it. It's not data that is super dedicated to telling you the exact time and place of different units. I'm not exactly sure what this website even says, but it would be nice to get back to it at some point and make another video. There was one more website that I wanted to show, and it's this website here. And it says, sorry, you have been blocked. And I've tried to access this website a dozen times and I haven't been able to. And I have reason to believe that since the war started in Ukraine, that this website has been shut down basically for whatever reason. But it was an incredibly good website. It had a map and it showed you the location of different Russian units on the Eastern Front. And so I'm going to work with this book, When Titans Clash, created by David Glantz. He's one of the most well-renowned World War II historians, probably the most famous American historian when it came to studying the Eastern Front. And what he has at the end of his book is a large collection of data sets. And these are the data sets that I want to work with. The data sets don't provide information with everything that you would possibly want. Exactly what do we even want as far as data sets are concerned? What would be the ideal data sets for studying the Eastern Front of for studying the Eastern Front of World War II. Ideally, know the units, location, um, know the unit type, basically know all the unit types is the first thing, so know all structures because in armies you have structures and substructures. So, from army level to division level and even smaller, theoretically this would include squad level. Theoretically this would include squad level unit placement. I would argue that obviously the individual soldier is the smallest unit type, but squads are typically the cohesion of the infantry. um, and so but because due to fog of war, smaller units are harder to track. And a lot of times, I think even in wars today, um, that information is confidential, at least in the war in Ukraine is. But I do wonder if, Soviet formations, or excuse me, Russian formations even know exactly where their units are at any given moment in time. And is that data recorded somewhere or is stored in some sort of historical record? I don't know. Um, but due to fog of war, smaller units are harder to track. So for our example, let's work with simply divisions. I think if we could just simply keep track of divisions, that's a good starting place. Because divisions can occupy towns, small cities, important geographical locations, and so forth. Geographical locations, etc. But basically, the first step is to know all the unit types. That's the first thing. Um, the second thing is know their location. And, the aspect that I was saying a moment ago about the fog of war actually applies to um, the location of the units. Um, Basically, ideally would have geographic coordinates, in other words, latitude and longitude. And in this way, we can model the movements by combining the first and second types of data. We can model the entire uh, ground conflict on a map. And the best reference I have for the kind of map that I'm talking about is the Deep State Live map that we have right now, as far as the conflict going on in Ukraine. This is an incredible website, community built, but basically tracks the unit of at least Russian formations. The Ukrainian units are confidential for safety reasons, operational reasons. The Ukraine does not want to share the location of their units. And surely the Russian information is guesswork, but it's quite precise, and they use a lot of resources to find this information. but it keeps track of the war every day. It's been tracking almost the entire war from day one. I don't think it was from day one. I think took them about 5 months into the war to make this map. But it's a really impressive map and it has a lot of information. And so I don't see why we can't build this for World War II, and start with that. Let that be the first layer of data. Um, Basically, see Deep State Live map for reference. Um, the idea is to build this for World War II. You know, track all divisions across all fronts of the war, and starting with the Eastern Front. I think the Eastern Front is it's the largest front of the war. It's the one that had the most amount of divisions. And so I think starting with the Eastern Front is a notable task. If we can get the Eastern Front done, we can then explore. Once done, we can explore the fronts basically. Um, and so the key is to have this data. And so the question then becomes is how to get the data. And I think the best resource or the most accessible resource is going to be second degree or secondhand sources. Basically, World War II history books. But there's also primary source, which would come from some kind of historical archive. The exact location of which I do not presently know. I don't know exactly where to find that. Like I said, you can Google search World War II data, and here's World War II records. The U.S. is probably the best archive, I understand, but I haven't been able to find data on the location of U.S. Army divisions in World War II. Here's missing aircrew, World War II honor list of dead and missing, a state summary of war casualties from World War II. But I haven't actually been able to get the locations of the actual ground units. There was another source that whose information I've lost basically. But basically, there was a person who offered to provide the Wehrmacht maps. World War II data. Let's see if we can find it. Wehrmacht maps. Um, you've got these cool maps, which are really well made. But the problem with these maps is that they're only single snapshots of the conflict. And we want to have basically a series of snapshots. Um, and so, like this map, for example, has all these arrows. And this it does provide insight, but I want to see the actual movement of the units as they advance. There's probably another possible way of programming this, of creating some sort of vector movement, but I would require more advanced programming, certainly. Nevertheless, I mean, some of these maps do provide a lot of information, and you kind of, with thanks to the arrows, you kind of get a general sense as to the location and movement of the units. Um, so you do get the information kind of pointed across. But I think it'd be cool to have an interactive map that shows the location of every unit. Um, it's certainly one way of storing the data. But these maps are really well made, and you get a sense as to what happened. We just wanted to create the next iteration of it, basically, um, of the movement of these units. But here you got some more snapshots, and then you get the vectors of the actual movement of these armies. And we obviously want the map to be as historically accurate as possible. I know that some of these maps are not 100% accurate, um, because there is sort of a historical inconsistency with the data. So, with the most historically accurate data possible. But yeah, these maps are really good. Again, we get more snapshots of the conflict, but we get all these arrows. And so the arrows sort of kind of give you some sort of time lapse sense. This is how most historians have been studying the wars with these maps. But I want to actually create a website that basically has more information, as much information as possible. Um, and basically create the most advanced World War II website on the internet. So it's a very ambitious project. It has a lot of goals. I don't think I'm going to necessarily do it alone. I think it's going to be worse. It's going to be best done collaborating with other people, other historians that have a passion for wanting to study the conflict. And so I think that's part of the reason why I'm making this video is to kind of share my ideas and share where I want this project to go and where it's headed in due time. So I figure what I'm going to do is basically track every step of the way of the process. Here's a Wikipedia Commons. Again, we get more maps, but what I'm looking for is the actual historical Wehrmacht maps. And so that's what I'm looking for. And yeah, these is it right here. Digital Historical Archive. Um, uh, we have actually a number. This might be actually the website that I'm looking for. German military situation, occupation of Czechoslovakia. We have 4 maps here. 1940, we have 61 maps of the Battle of France, which is really interesting because uh, the Battle of France only lasted for 6 weeks. So if you do the math, ideally we have 1 map per day. But you can see the cost of these maps, $15. So if I wanted all 61 maps, yeah, that's already going to cost $1,000, which is actually it's not too expensive. But sort of a little bit above, at least the Eastern Front, which actually is not even included here. I would want for 4 years of the conflict. So 4 years of the conflict. The conflict started on June 22nd, 1941, and ended on May 7th, 1945. And so, how many years is that? Let's just say 4 years. 1941, started in 41, then we go into 42, 43, 44, 45, about 4 years times 365. That's over 1,000 photos. And if each one it costs about $20. you're looking at a $30,000 cost as far as getting the some of the most historically reliable maps. Of course, it's only going to be from the German perspective, but it'll be super interesting nevertheless. Um, Here it says notes, operations, and intelligent maps can also be found in the World War II German records section of this catalog, including these three items, which have many operational maps. Um, this one roll, OKH and Eastern Front, the Western Front map, 1944 to 45. So it's the last year of the war. That's really interesting. And then that has 36 rolls. So it's actually not every day. And then this other roll here, OKH Eastern Front map and combat reports 1941 to 1944. And then there's another roll here of Army Group North, map atlas of operations in Russia, 1941 and 1943. So there's actually some a pretty fair good of maps, but I know that there's additional maps that we could get. For example, actually these may include Operation Barbarossa, which would probably be the one I would like to start with the most. Um, uh, let's see if we can find any free items here. Um, yeah, these are like the hand-created maps. Here we go. War II German Army Eastern Front map atlas, June map, 21st of June until December 1941. The atlas contains 121 colored daily situation maps showing German and Soviet units positions on the Eastern Front from the 21st of June to 6 December 1941. Each map is 5 to 6 megabytes, and the entire collection is nearly 8 gigabytes. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Um, so I'm curious to know. Oh, so I think he only shares a few images. So this person has made a business of creating these of getting these maps. I think I would love to work with this person. Um, but it obviously will cost some money to for me to get. But maybe we start with the Battle of France instead of Operation Barbarossa. Um, well, I kind of want to start with Operation Barbarossa personally. 121 maps. The entire operation was lasted for about 5 months, 5 or 6 months. Let's see, it starts in June, July, August, September, October, November, December. And so that's about 6 months, a little bit less. And so about 30 days per 6 months, you're looking at about a 180-day operation. This one has 121. So it wouldn't be every day, but it's pretty freaking close. Um, we also have some data here. Um, Survey of Allied tank casualties in World War II. So the question is, do we have data here that we can work with? Okay, it's more like a tactical analysis, tank casualties. Oh, but here we go. We definitely have some data sets to work with, some data tables to work with. And so obviously the challenge would be to convert this data, make it digital, create digital data because right now it's in PDF format. And so there's a lot to analyze here. There's also the repairability of vehicles. That's very interesting. Sampling of U.S. First Army crew casualties. So I believe this is for, yeah, this is for Allied casualty, tank casualties. Here's another document. It says the U.S. 3rd and 7th Army maps of the Maginot Line, 1944. Why would it be the Maginot Line in 1944? I think they mean the Siegfried Line. You also have World War One, some World War One documents. German Army General Staff's maps of World War One. That's pretty interesting. But obviously, working with Operation Barbarossa would be the best place. Here it says Der Feldzug gegen Sowjetrussland, if I pronounced that correctly. Let's see if we can find Zegzug gegen Somjet. I don't know what that says. Rukland? Is that a K? It's a W. Here we go. Associated Places, Theater of Operation, Eastern Front in 1940. Show only records with disguised media. Show old records. So this data is obviously available somewhere in the world, but someone has taken the time to digitize it. Um, um, yeah, this is definitely the company. We got some articles here, but obviously I'm looking for something having to do with the Eastern Front, ideally. So obviously having a visual map is certainly one way. Having visual data is certainly one way. But another way is to use secondary sources. and basically reading the data that is mentioned in the book. And basically, the book will talk about the location of different units at different moments in time, and using that information to get a sense as to the location of these units. That's certainly another approach. And so we can go now through the data and see what this book offers. Because obviously, the problem with the secondary sources is that the data is very piecemeal and it doesn't offer a complete picture, not as complete as, say, a map does. So the first data set, and this is what I started to work with. I had here we go. I tried to apply some data science methods, and basically what I'm doing is cleaning up the data. But I try to make an Excel sheet with the data. And this data is interesting. It tells you basically, it gives you a sense of, um, it gives you a sense as to, it tells you the types of units and how many of each, but it doesn't actually give you the individual names of the units themselves. And so we know that there's three fronts. We know that there's 8 armies for the German side. We know that there's panzer groups, 4 panzer groups, 40 corps, and the list goes on. All kinds of mechanized, different types of corps, um, different types of divisions. It always tells you information on the divisions, and even tells you information on brigades, and even some regiments. But it doesn't tell you information on the actual individual unit types. And I would argue that in a sense, as far as creating a visual map, I would say that treating each data as its own, treating each unit as its own special data is the best approach. Obviously, we could create a generalized sense, but I would say that there's a lot of variability among the unit types. Even two infantry divisions are not 100% identical. So it's easier just to keep track of that unit as far as its name, more so than its type, if that makes sense. Track units by name rather than by type, i.e., 6th German Army versus infantry army. I'm sure you can do both methods. You could definitely do the generalized approach. Um, but I think first, in order for the data to be accurate, it's better to track the units by name first. Kind of like you know, you know, um, have an entire assortment of units first. Then apply the general analysis methods, i.e., measuring with given units or variable. And so I think that seems to me to make the most sense to me, is sort of that approach. So anyways, this is the first data set. I called it cleaned, but I basically moved some things around to make it a little bit easier to read. Um, then I have another one called manipulated, and I basically totally modify it so that it's much more ready for data analysis. And I break units up into smaller sections. I grab data so it doesn't repeat itself. I separate the Soviet data from the German data. I don't wonder if I have Romanian. I don't know what happened to the Romanian units. I wonder if I included the Romanian units here. I feel like I didn't, because this data table also includes Romanian types. So I'm gonna rename this and simply call it incomplete because I think it's missing the Romanian units. Um, and then I have the original, the table A. So yeah, that's the first first data table, data set. I think I may pause right here and take a quick break before I continue. Yeah, I'm basically preparing some coffee as I continue the work. But my approach here is going to be one of uh, creative chaos, if effectively is the best way I can put it. Sort of jumping into the rabbit hole and seeing where it goes. And I obviously want to make as much progress as I can, but I need to understand that this process is very imperfect and very messy. But I can start talking about table B. This one provides comparative strengths for 1941, June 22nd. So it only provides information, supposedly only for June 22nd, but there's actually a little bit of information with regards to other dates. I know that, for example, like the Romanian units, it has units that are active on or after 2nd of July. So it's not 100% June 22nd. And that's part of the problem with historical data is that, depending on how the historian organized it, most historians are not 100% numerically precise with their methods. And I think it's kind of just the nature of studying history. Historians tend to have a little bit more of a relaxed approach when it comes to numerical methods or any kind of numerical technique. Um, and It seems to be the case when it comes to military historical data. So this table supposedly is only for June 22nd, but it has a few extra bits of information. For example, here there's reserves on Finland on the 30th of June. So even though it's called June 22nd, it should have been called June 22nd through July 2nd, basically, if you want to be more historically precise. And so a lot of this cleaning and organizing the data and transforming the data is to kind of make it conform to a much more rigorous numerical approach. And so it takes effort, and it takes effort to figure out a method. And I find that it's not really the most effective approach because what is exactly our goal? Our goal is to have access to data that we can then use to create impressive models. And so we obviously need the data first, but there's no need to sort of uh, clean the data uh, or clean the tables. Rather, I think it might be better to create new data tables and data tables that capture more information in a more generalized fashion or in a more specific fashion, rather. Um, And it's not to say that the data here isn't rigorous. I think there is a quality of rigorousness to the data, but it's just not to the caliber of rigorousness we would need for data science. And so, anyways, there's more information in Table B. Basically, I cleaned it and then I transformed it. Let's look at the transformed version. But there's a lot of extra information that's packed into this. Things like number of tanks available for any given operation. There's different historical sources. So different historians use different historical sources, and each historian sort of tracks their own sort of set of data. So there's some inconsistencies here as far as the rigorous approach. But again, we have general numbers, but it would be nice to know the exact numbers of each unit rather than having this generalized approach. So there's that. Like I say, it's better to track units by name rather than by type. And then by extension, better to have subdata, have data on individual units rather than general. And it certainly begs the question, um, how did historians calculate the total numbers of units? And this is a question that I don't have the answer to. Something that maybe if I decide to upload this video, um, because I recognize that the creative process here is, it's that creative chaos, and I don't know how much attention will be given to a video like this. But this is a question I would have. One of my questions would be, um, how did historians calculate the total number of units? And specifically in the case of this data set with David Glantz, we have other historians like Zolotarev, um, Mel'tiukhov, uh, you know, uh, so yeah, those are some questions. And then we can move on to, I think, one of the more interesting sort of sets of data here, which starts to actually work with individual units a little bit more. The scale of these data sets is at the army level, that basically tracks Soviet Army units that were either destroyed or disbanded from 1941 until 1945, except they're broken up into a number of different tables. And so we have Table C, which is for 1941, Table D, which is Soviet armies mobilized. I think these two data sets should be combined into one larger data table. Um, Basically, the first data table are units that are destroyed or disbanded. We have data of units that are basically disappearing on the map. We have dates and a general sense as far as location is concerned as to where they disappear. We don't have the exact coordinates, but we have a sense as to where they disappeared, basically. The city that they disappeared of, and then we also have the subordination, which is which army group, or in this case, Russian front. Uh, Not the actual physical front, but the Soviets designated their army groups as fronts. Is what they called them. But we have a sense. So this data is insightful. It's not, again, the best data because we want to have the exact coordinates of formations, but it is a start. And something can be built with this. And it would be interesting to know what it would look like simply working with this data set. I do think that obviously working with something like the data set of a digital historical archive would be a lot better. Um, I think it would be a lot better, frankly. Um, so I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what's the best approach. What's the best way to tackle this project. And there's actually um, he has more data sets. See, I'm gonna get my coffee. So yeah, let's see here. I mean, this is the actual data that I want. I would like to start with this data a bit more. Um, because even if we don't get exact coordinates, we do have locations on the map that we can work with, and we can possibly translate the map information into coordinate information. So here, for example, 742 images of transport and supply charts, order reports, maps, and order battle and casualty reports pertaining to security of German-Hungarian units defense at Danube area. Map showing the daily tactical disposition of Army Group South units in Lake Balaton area, March 1945. And so I basically want all his maps. So he has information of individual corps during different dates. I don't, what I don't understand is why isn't this information free? Why hasn't anyone in the government, this information should be free. Anyways, he has information on different panzer divisions. I mean, I would make this information free. Let's look at the Facebook page. I'll do that later. And I think he sends physical CDs, um, which is not what I want. I want uh, digital information. Which just makes me wonder, so I think they seem to have done a great job. The only problem I see is that it isn't free. It should be. So let's see. We've been working for about an hour now, and I feel like I've met a dead end, where it seems to have found a website that has basically everything I'm looking for. Um, but I think it cost I believe it costs like $25 a map. So I'm thinking maybe reach out to him. And again, if we want, you know, if we want to have all the maps available, I don't know, it's going to cost several thousands of dollars. So, I could start a fund campaign or start something. Um, but I don't see why this information shouldn't be, it should be free, in my opinion. Um, and so I can sort of transition to a more personal recording, but that's sort of the problem I shouldn't run into at the moment, which is where to get the funds uh, to do this. And so I think I will reach out to him and contact them and tell them basically uh, that I would like access to these maps. Um, I think it's the first step. Of course, the other approach is using this World War II data map, but I just don't think this is the best data, in my opinion. It doesn't have the exact location of the units, and so that adds some degree of confusion, in my opinion. Um, we can look at these other data tables. We have Soviet weapons production, uh, June 22nd to December 31st. Again, more generalized information. This table F, um, is table that provides a little bit more hands-on information. We get the names of towns and locations. This is actually really good data. Um, and we get information on the front. We get the unit types, but it's still a little bit of generality that's being applied here. We know the total number of troops, but again, we don't know the actual troops of each individual unit. And it'd be nice if we knew the information of each individual unit. That way, we have a sort of consistent structure to follow. But this kind of goes on, but this is only 15th of November 1941, only one snapshot of the war. We will need many more snapshots. Table G is basically a continuation of that, except it's on December 6th. This is uh, information, again, Soviet versus German. We get the names of certain regions, near certain towns, certain cities, but mostly towns. But again, we get clusters of unit types and information on the cluster, but we actually don't get information on the individual units. Um, Table H is basically the continuation of that initial data, the ones that track the location of armies, whether they were created or destroyed. So I would say that, Table H is basically an extension of tables, see, Table D, and I believe Table C. So Table H is an extension of Table C and Table D, in my opinion, except this one's for 1942. It's quite a long one. Here, information on Soviet destroyed units 1942. This is Table I. Continuation of Table C, D, and H. So as far as when Titan class data table tables C, D, H, I, as well as J. J is for 1943, and K. J, K, L, as well as M. All track Soviet formations created or destroyed. Created, destroyed, created, destroyed, renamed, slash redesignated, which is kind of the same thing as created or destroyed, depending on the unit type, and mobilized, like basically their new locations. But we have information, but we don't actually have information exactly where they are. We have information more on the subordination, but we actually don't know. So uh, scaled at army level doesn't provide exact information on unit location. Um, this table would be ideal if it was done at the divisional level and done for both sides. Um, Also, uh, data on when the units were also data to track units on a daily level. Soviet Army disbanded. So that's table M. Table N, we'll rotate this. Compare strength to combat forces. So this provides general information at scale to get another one of those general data tables. So I would say table A and B, as well as table N. Tables A, B, N are basically general data tables. If we go back, let's look at the other ones. There was a few more. A, B, we talked about C and D. Table E, it's also general. Table F, and G track clusters of units, size and strength on given days. Uh, uh, Ideal data would have information on individual units and for the entire front and for all days of the war. Um, but anyways, going back to, I think we've covered everything. We got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, O, L, M, N. So this is general data. It's interesting though. We have more dates. We actually have a fair share of dates. Um, so that's pretty good. Our general data. Table N is also general, but has a large set of dates. So a little bit more of what we're looking for. And then we got table O, pretty much generalized data on casualties. Again, um, Same thing with table P, except this is Soviet casualties. And I think the Q is the last data table. And so again, the question is how did he get this data? Soviet wartime strength and losses, basically general data again. It provides time ranges, not actually individual dates. These are basically by operation. Table Q is by operation. It is scaled across operational dates. So there is some use here. In fact, all the data here is considered useful. Um, um, I think I said it here. Better to track units by name rather than by type in order to be accurate, i.e., have entire assortment of units first, then apply general analysis methods. Most of when Titans clash data is general analysis is better for general analysis rather than specific dates. So that's one example. And that's pretty much the extent of my World War II climate dynamics at the present moment. Um, I found data sets when Titans clash, um, but I'm clearly not satisfied with with the data sets that are provided. So I'm curious to know if there's any other sources I can find. When Titans class, I think is a pretty good start, but it's a rough start when it comes to organizing data. In conclusion, when Titans clash is a rough start when it comes to acquiring accurate data. Accurate when it comes to acquiring um, accurate, specific data. The data is accurate but lacks specificity for what we're trying to do as far as um, for modeling the Eastern Front. And so that's, I think that's probably what I can conclude from this video here is I'm here trying to figure out the process, and I have one lead, but it seems to be above what I can afford right now. If I were just to get articles of Operation Barbarossa, so instead of 365, um, let's see, June 22nd is the start date of Operation Barbarossa. So June has 8 days. July July has 31 days. August would have 30. Um, oh man, I think August has 31 days. Yeah, July is 8 days. Oh, July has 31 days. August has 30 days. So that's June, July, August. Oh, no, August has 31 days as well. I see. Then September has 30 days. October has 31 days. November has 30 days. And the operation ends around December 6th. So we'll add another 6 days there. That's 167 files. And I'm still looking at a cost of, $4,000, quite possibly, from what I've been able to gather here. I think I'm looking for T78. T78. Here, the document here. So this is pretty interesting. The President Guide covers 38 rolls of film of records of Oberkommando des Heer, included are materials of the Central Office in Berlin and some of its supporting agencies. Well, now I know they're located in Alexandria, Virginia. It's all in German. A lot of it is in German. I do not speak German. Oh man, they actually still cost some money to get the films. These prices are based on charges of 8 cents for each foot of microfilm. For the prices rounded off to the nearest dollar. So yeah, so this person I definitely spent some of their own money to get the roles. Read part two. Mhm. So yeah, really cool project, I have to say. But it's certainly gonna cost, you know, it's gonna cost me some money to do it. Um, I still think it would be a worthwhile task, but I have to figure out where to get the funds. And so I just don't think unless we can find you know, another approach. Um, Here we got map sets. So yeah, what more can I add? I don't think there's much more I want to add right now. But I'm simply sitting here thinking, what's the next sort of creative process? And I'm just not sure what I should do. I kind of want to take a break, um, but I'm here to say that I feel relatively stuck and trapped. Not trapped, but definitely reached a bottleneck, and now I'm trying to figure out how to circumvent it. So, you know, bottleneck, um, getting the data is not easy. Data research is the biggest challenge. Solutions. See if we can find solutions. Find more books with better data. Explore more David Glantz books, perhaps. Um, um, and I say, uh, pray to God for that money. I want to say, let's just say $50,000. It's basically how much money I need. Um, and just figure out where that money's going to come from, basically. But I think I'm going to wrap it up here for now. But I think what I intend to do is explore more David Glantz books. I think is the next best approach. Um, and then as far as uploading this video, I think I'm going to go ahead and upload it. I don't think I have anything to lose from uploading this video, but um, basically, if anyone wants to help and helping me get access to as much War II data as possible, but ideally it's data that has all the information of every single unit type, um, then it's going to be a lot easier to create this project that's basically like the deep life state map project, something similar. Um, but first, we need to get the data. That's the hardest part of this project is getting the data. But that's what I have for some more to cloud dynamics. That's kind of where we are at the moment. There's obviously a lot of smaller projects that we could work on, but I think for now, I'm going to leave it at this. And, any responses, comments, feedback is appreciated. Any suggestions on what I should do is also appreciated. Because I think this is a worthy task. This task, um, I think, is going to serve humanity well, some way, somehow. But I think the challenge is, um, figuring out, how to provide this product to the world. And I don't understand why it shouldn't be free. It should be completely open source and free, just like the Deep Life State Map is. Their work is incredible. They have a lot of great insight. I think they could take it to the next level. Like we could have information, stats on the casualties of individual units, but we're going to need more data. So it's definitely a project that I think I can work with. But for now, this is what I have, and I will continue the process and aim to get this done in my lifetime. I think would be a worthwhile goal. So thank you for listening, and I will see you in another video at another time. Take care.